And it's all very tawdry, and it raises questions about conflicts of interest and hence the Commons inquiry. And would Farage as Prime Minister behave like Trump has totally corruptly done as president and use his office to enrich himself? So there's that big question, but there are other big questions too. There's a clear lack of talent in reform. You see it at the top, you see it in their selection of candidates. There just aren't enough good people and respectable people with honest records to elect hundreds of MPs of integrity and to form a government.
The demise of Keir Starmer and the rise of Andy Burnham to the highest political post in the land has naturally commanded our attention. But it's also masked another significant development in the country. The bloom would seem to be off Reform UK in general, and Nigel Farage in particular, at least for the moment. Reform hasn't just peaked in the polls, it's started to slip back from over 30% to the mid-20s in the most recent. As for its leader, well, he's been embroiled in a row about a gift of £5 million from a crypto billionaire based in Thailand. That gift is now under investigation by the parliamentary authorities. And now we learn that Mr. Farage has also been making a nice little earner, well, £22,500 an hour, to be exact, flogging gold for direct bullion. It's a gold dealer. Now, there's nothing illegal about that, as far as we know anyway, but for a man who would be our next Prime Minister, it's not exactly a great look. So has Mr. Farage peaked along with his party, or is this just a stumble on the road to Downing Street? Let's speak to Michael Crick, broadcaster and biographer of Nigel Farage. Michael, Nigel Farage has been through controversies in the past, often involving money. He's come back pretty much unscathed. Won't this happen this time too?
Well, I think this time he's in a lot of quite serious trouble. And I think actually there's about a 1 in 3 chance he won't be leader of Reform at the time of the next election. I think, for a start, I think his greed is getting hold of him too much. And I think he's probably observed Donald Trump and said, yes, I'd like a bit of that too. And so hence the Harborne donation, hence the gold bullion promotion, which he's been doing for quite a while now. And it's all very tawdry, and it raises questions about conflicts of interest and hence the Commons inquiry. And would Farage as Prime Minister behave like Trump has totally corruptly done as president and use his office to enrich himself? So there's that big question, but there are other big questions too. There's a clear lack of talent in Reform. You see it at the top, you see it in their selection of candidates. There just aren't enough good people and respectable people with honest records to elect hundreds of MPs of integrity and to form a government. And it's very difficult to know what Farage does about that dearth of talent. And then the third thing I'd say, and this is perhaps the most important of all, is that Farage's inability to get on with senior colleagues has resulted in the formation of an even more right-wing party by Rupert Lowe. He's originally elected as a Reform MP 2 years ago, and who achieved an astonishing 7% in the Makerfield by-election, more than twice as much as the Conservatives, Lib Dems and Greens combined. Lowe is clearly not going to give up. Farage and other people at the top of Reform accused Lowe a year ago of bullying and so on, and even the extraordinary an occasion when the armed police turned up at Lowe's farm, and nothing came of any of this. Lowe is on the warpath and is a real threat to Farage. And Farage himself seems absolutely knackered right now. He did a whole series of tetchy interviews last week, very uncharacteristic. He needs a long holiday. But I suspect, actually, he likes the idea of being elected Prime Minister, but he looks at what's happening to Burnham now and what's happened with Starmer and Sunak, and he's rather scared at the possibility he might have to run the country. And I think that's those that I would say are the problems besetting Reform and Farage, even though the polls, they're still ahead in the polls.
Right, though not by as much now. Well, maybe he just does need a holiday. You know, he lives a pretty rough lifestyle, and he works long days at the same time as having long lunches and long dinners. Maybe he'll come back revived in the spring time, or you seem to hint that maybe something deeper is at work here.
Well, I think he's getting more irritable. Certainly a long holiday, and I'm told that this is going to happen. He's going to go away for a long period this summer, which is totally different from what he's done previously. Last year, for instance, and I think the year before, he took advantage of the political holidays in sort of late July and August to do a whole series of press conferences and take the initiative. Well, I think that is he's got to have a rest, and he's got to think through, and he's got to simplify his life. He's got all these outside interests, including presenting on GB News, although he does less of that than he used to do. He's got to concentrate on the job. And the other problem he has, it's a one-man band, really, reform. It's a dictatorship. There's no democracy. There's no consensus, collaboration, no real discussion. It's all Farage. And you can't run a dictatorship in a modern democracy like Britain. You've actually got to delegate, and you've got to have good people around you. And that's why I think it's the job is overwhelming him, and he has extraordinary energy, but it's beginning to wear. And I think there are people, a lot of people in reform who are worried about this. And without Farage, Reform's voting figures would be, at least probably plummet to about half of what they are now. It's only when Farage came back 2 years ago that Reform became serious players.
Well, as you say, the problem with a one-man band is that if that one-man band is playing the wrong notes, then the whole band, by definition, is out of tune. That's the difficulty there. What do you make of Reform's current status? You're quite right about how much it depends on Nigel Farage still. It's still ahead in the polls, but not by very much, and the gap may be narrowing.
Well, I think, they're still about 4 or 5% ahead of the Conservatives and Labour.
Yes.
And they've been ahead in almost every poll since April of last year. So that's 14, 15 months.
Yes.
An extraordinary run of success for an opposition party that was elected with only 5 MPs at the last general election. They absolutely wiped the floor in the local elections, but they failed in by-elections. And that's the other problem. Another problem they have is that the British public are learning and much more willing to take part in tactical voting on a scale we've never seen before. So you get Conservatives willing to vote Labour, or Labour people willing to vote Conservative. The anybody but Farage element in our politics is going to grow. And if you look at the polls, who is now the least liked political leader once Starmer is gone? It's Nigel Farage. And of course, he suffered from that before, which is why it took him so long to become elected an MP. But you saw in Makerfield and in Gorton and Denton and in the Caerphilly by-election how everybody, lots of people, are willing to vote for the party that will defeat Reform and Farage. And that is very difficult to overcome. And of course, the next general election, the constituencies will be the same as the constituencies last time, whereas last time there were a whole new set of new boundaries. So it was difficult for people to know who was best placed to beat Reform. This time it will be much clearer, and there will be campaign groups out there telling everybody who is best placed to beat Reform. So I think the chances of Reform winning the next election in terms of seats are pretty slim. They may win it in terms of the popular vote, but in terms of seats, there will be a lot of, basically all the other parties will be ganging up on Reform against Reform to ensure that they don't get anywhere near a majority. Now, that may change. All sorts of happen. The Burnham government may be a complete disaster. And all sorts. And we've got 3 years yet before any of this has to be decided.
But maybe the political weather is changing. I mean, we do live in febrile times, and, today's trend can be tomorrow's footnote. I understand that. But Labour has a new leader, thinks he can connect with the kind of working class voters that have switched to Reform. Tories have a leader growing in confidence and stature. And as you pointed out, they lost 2 crucial by-elections in the North West. Maybe the weather is just changing that bit against Reform. Maybe the best is over for them.
A bit, I'd say. Well, what has surprised me since Burnham won Makerfield, and it's been obvious now for more than a week he's going to be the next prime minister, is how little effect that's had on the polls. I mean, Labour's gone up a bit.
Yes.
But you would have thought...
Not much, you're quite right. There's been no bounce, no Burnham bounce.
No, I mean, given what a popular figure he clearly is in Manchester, and I'd say the Northwest and so on, and I think maybe one of the dangers for Burnham, one of the many dangers, is the more he keeps banging on about Manchester, and I say this as a Mancunian, the more it's going to put people off in other areas, in the rest of the North. A lot of, in places like Leeds and Liverpool, they hate Manchester, and or in the Southwest, where actually there's more, there's probably more deprivation in Cornwall than there is in large parts of the North, and so it's a really tricky one, this, for Burnham. Okay, say, look, I've made progress in Manchester, and he clearly did as Manchester mayor, but doing things like taking on the chief executive of the combined Manchester Authority and making it all Manchester based, I think there's a danger there of causing huge resentment. And the other problem with Burnham is he's totally unscrutinised. Burnham has not been, so as far as I can see, publicly, nobody has yet asked him a question about anything.
Newsnight did an interview with him, but he didn't come out too well from it. But he certainly
that was in the by-election. It was dreadful.
That was in the by-election. You're quite right.
Yeah. No, since the by-election.
He hasn't. Well, we're available to do it, Michael.
He could do a series of interviews with people like you, and I better not name the others, otherwise you won't have me back on. Or he could, for instance, go before the Commons Liaison Committee, or be grilled by.
I think he should come before us instead. They're too soft to touch. Michael, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for coming on. It's an interesting development that probably we haven't given enough attention to because of the great Labour soap opera. Michael Crick there, biographer of Nigel Farage.